What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that need to be overcome in education today? I'm talking not so much the function of the school board member and then the role there, but just overall in our overall system and what's going on.
Sure. I think you've got a huge increase in mental health support going on right now, and being able to identify students and get them the support they need. You've also got, and it's been exponentially increased by the pandemic, a huge increase in unfilled teacher positions. I think Princeton County, like within the last month, was still looking to hire 700 teachers.
Wow.
There's always been a bit of a teacher shortage, but with everything that's gone on in the last year and a half, a lot of people are choosing to move out, and it's harder to attract people in. And you have to have teachers if you're going to teach. So that's an ongoing struggle.
Can I interrupt for just a second before you move on? So you said the things we've been seeing in the last year and a half, you alluded to the pandemic. So are you referring specifically to the pandemic, or are you referring to some of the social agendas that are being now pushed down quite forcibly into the schools, or all of the above? Be a little more specific.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some cases that have made the headlines of teachers who have quit over different social ideology, et cetera, that's being pushed in. But it's been the pandemic more than anything that's just given teachers a very hard time, right? I mean, every 2 months, school divisions are changing up how they're doing things, and pushing out new programs. And it's the uncertainty, and the constant change. So that's just made it very challenging for teachers. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also made it very challenging for parents, and seeing this September what the enrollment numbers are going to be is going to be. It's not that every parent has an opportunity to choose something outside of the public school system, but a lot of people are looking through their options. So, and you've got it with parents on both sides, right? Yeah. You've got parents who are adamant for some sort of, in-person educational options that aren't, still making kids feel like they're in a bubble. And then you've got, on the flip side, you've got parents who want more restricted, they're more focused on their kids' health safety and want more restrictive things going on. Up here in Princeton County, back in May, we gave all of the parents the option to choose if their kids were going to be in person or virtual. And now with the Delta variant popping up, we've got a whole bunch of parents who are like, oh, we chose in person, but now we want to switch and go over to a virtual option. And the school division's going, guys, we made plans all through the summer of, we're doing, you told us you wanted X. We've got to position teachers and software and, be prepared for virtual versus in person for what you guys gave us. And we can't rechange it all up. And so, there may be some parents who decide they want something that's more virtual, and there's parents looking through what their options are. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. So let's talk a little bit about the qualities that make up a good school board member. So I'm sure on your board there was quite a diversity. There usually is, and that can be a good thing. I mean, there are a lot of people today that are looking at, hey, maybe I want to run for school board. Maybe I want to affect change. And, some people are asking, what are the qualifications, and, what do I need an advanced degree? Do I need this or that or something? Talk to us a little bit about that from just your own experience, and as you've observed a board functioning, and some of the different qualities that are helpful and essential to a school board member.
Sure. So from a legal perspective, generally you've got to be over 18, you've got to live in whatever jurisdiction it is. And I was elected at 25, and I was the youngest elected official in Northern Virginia. So there's really not a lot of legal prereqs, but you've got to be able to listen and be in touch with your community. You've got to have some level of community connections. And you've got to be able to work with people who you may not agree with all the time. Because, the school board member who you disagree with on X fight, you may need for a vote 2 months down the road.
Yeah.
They're very small boards. Usually our board was 8 members. Most boards are somewhere in that ballpark. And so, you need 4, 5, 6 votes to pass something. Sometimes 4 votes to stop something. So you're dealing with small groups of people. And those human relationships, while having your own backbone and core convictions, are an important balance. Mm-hmm. Right? And there may be something that is crazy important to somebody on a community issue, whether it's boundaries or school namings or some regular community issue, that the normal things that come up before school boards. That, all right, you may be 80% fine with, and okay, fine, you give it to them because down the road they'll appreciate it and support you later on. On the flip side, you've got to have time, because people would ask, oh, how much time does being in the school board take? And the answer was as much time as you let it, because there was a school or community event almost every night that you could show up at and be at. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be able to say no, but you do also have to have time and some level of understanding the balance that you're going to have to figure out between family and work and being on the school board, mm-hmm. Because it will consume all of the extra time that you have. And so, like, on that front, somebody should go show up and just watch in person a few school board meetings before they're going to run, right? Like, okay, you may be interested in school board because of stuff that makes the news, but does a more regular mundane school board meeting, like, are you willing to bone up and learn about those issues? Can you track with them? Like, is this something that you're going to care about? The third quarter budget update and what the administration's doing to move around money in a third quarter budget. Mm-hmm. Like, are you willing to go read through the consent agenda items to see what's being pushed through on unanimous consent that maybe you have to object to? Right? Like, are you willing to actually put in the work of, understanding what's the different things that are coming before the board? I mean, you'll have, your academic achievement maybe quarterly or twice a year reports on where different SOL and other academic achievement things are. Are you willing to go dig into those numbers and ask the hard questions, right? Like, it's not just I'm interested in what made news, so I'm going to run, but it's an all-encompassing, have to understand what's going on throughout the school division.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because that is absolutely true and doesn't get said enough. At the end of the day, people are looking for school board candidates who aren't just fiery on their issue, but who can actually get in there and administrate well, so that the overall process of education, down to the critical areas of helping make sure their kids can read and write and do math, have some skills in just functional things that are going to help them be good citizens and be able to be a vital part of the workforce in the future. I mean, that's all Yeah. And that's part of oversight that has to be given.
Well, and one of the challenges we've got right now is you keep bringing controversial issues before school boards every month. You don't have time to actually focus on educational issues, right? And ultimately, a school division should care about what are we doing to make sure that after a kid graduates, they're either workforce ready or going to college, right? Like, how are we successfully preparing them to start, a life where they're going to succeed?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not your focus, and you've got hot button controversial stuff popping up every other month, things are going to slip through the cracks, and they just do.
So if there's somebody that is listening and they, you gave a couple things, go observe and see if the bigger picture fits them and they can be excited about doing those things. Are there other things you would recommend to somebody that's considering a run? What do they need to do? And you have any kind of check off list or anything that they might be able to do to prepare, or steps they need to take in order to do this properly?
Sure. First off, figure out how much money you're going to have to raise. School boards generally aren't high fundraising events, but see what people have had to raise for other comparable competitive school board races, and be sure you can do it. Because if you don't have the money, you're going to be in trouble, right? You're going to need money for literature, signs, maybe some mailers, maybe some other advertising. So make sure you can do that. Go look up past elections and just get a feel for how many votes were required to win at previous elections. Having some of those numbers in hand are important. Spend a little bit of time just researching, what kind of things the community is interested in. Are there maybe development issues going on? Are there issues with particular schools? So be aware of that. Show up at some of the, whether it's HOAs, PTO meetings, understand, the local community leaders within the jurisdiction you're looking at, and go meet and connect with some of those people. And have a circle of friends around you that you can actually talk to, and that you can actually hear and know from, right? If there's nobody in your life who, if they say, no, that's too crazy of an idea, or no, you need to slow down or rethink something, then maybe you're a little too headstrong and maybe you need to be careful, right? You've got to have some trusted core advisors around you who you can glean wisdom from, who you're willing to respect and listen to. And hopefully if you're in a place where you're looking to run for school board, you've got different people who have been involved in the community for a while in different capacities. That can help give you a bit of a lay of the land and give you some real advice, and there may be some people who are great, but do not have the personality for it, right? Like there are some people who run for office who, your average person, if they run for office, if they're of general goodwill, and they go talk to, independent or undecided people, you can go win them over, right? You have a few minute conversation, you connect, you understand each other. Okay, great. People believe you're accessible and you're willing to do stuff. But there are some people that run for office who come off as angry or grouchy or just a little too in people's face. And they may actually turn more people off when they go door knocking and actually pull over to them. So, you've got to be able to listen and work with people while still having a spine and know what you care about, right? Yep. And if you can balance those two things, hopefully you have the personality to do it right.
That's good input. Appreciate that. So here's another question. How can parents or stakeholders influence local education besides being on a school board?
school board members listen to the people who talk to them and who show up at meetings. And so if you have a group of parents who care, look at the school board meeting agendas, show up at meetings and talk about things that are of concern, email school board members. It is rare to get, let's say half a dozen emails on a particular topic, on a particular issue, right? And so if you get, if the school board gets half a dozen emails on an issue, they're at least going to pay attention and realize, oh, there's people concerned. And then it becomes a matter of, are you as parents willing to put in the research to actually understand what goes into an issue and, how the school board truly relates with it. And build some relationship with at least some of the school board members to where you don't just come off as controversial and angry. But if you're willing to show up, to email, and build relationships with school board members, parents can get stuff done. It happens plenty of times.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's out of those active parents that people arise who are worth running the school board, right? Because they actually know what's going on. They know a little bit of the dynamics of how the board works. It's not just this entity they happen to read about in the newspaper.
It's interesting. That's true in every situation. Leadership, especially elected leadership, but all leadership is looking for solutions, because real leaders are people who identify needs or problems or opportunities, and they go after them. And it's about making the right positive changes, leading toward things that improve our lives, our communities, et cetera. And, when you're in a leadership position like a school board member or any kind of thing like that, you're faced with the challenges and what your job really is to find solutions. And so when you've got people who step forward, who recognize there's a problem and who, don't just curse the darkness, but shine some light on it and say, well, here's some things I'm thinking about that may be useful and helpful. And you can tell it's well thought through. And as you engage and, they're doing good research and it's just not, like you said, some angry parent, which, by the way, I think sometimes parents need to be angry.
Sure.
But I, from
on the leadership front, if you're just angry and, as a school board member, so what kind of things would you believe would solve, your issue? And they've got nothing. It becomes very hard to keep taking them seriously or working with them. Versus, and I had an issue where it was me and one other school board member and about 4 community people. And we spent 5 hours one Sunday afternoon going through and hashing stuff out and going back and forth and finally coming to an agreement on stuff. We've spent smaller amounts of time working stuff out, but when there's people who are willing to come to the table with, hey, here's what we want, and you can be like, all right, well, here's what we can give, and you go back and forth and you get creative sometimes, and you negotiate the heck out of stuff, and the goal is to come out with something that's a win for as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Great. Here's another question for you. What are your thoughts on educational choice? Should parents have greater choice and voice in where and what their children learn, or should parents leave that up to the professionals, and why?
Sure. So I think that goes back to the earlier conversation that parents are they're the parent. They're the one who's ultimately responsible for their kids' education. Mm-hmm. And so their voice has to be listened to and taken seriously and believed to be credible. We have, it's an advantage of a larger school division, but we have kind of a lot of built-in choice where we didn't use maybe the buzzwords, but we give people a lot of choice. So we've got specialty programs across different schools, usually for a lot of maybe trade or fine arts type things. And we let kids transfer between high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, all over the school. So if there's a school that's a better fit, whether it's academically, sometimes it's just a better fit with working with a parent's drive to work and, being closer along their drive and easier to drop them off and pick them up. Maybe it's a better fit with different teachers and just the culture inside that particular school. But there are kids transferring all over the county to schools that fit better for them. We also have schools. We have 2 schools, and we don't call them charter schools, but you apply to go there. You have to do a level of community service commitment. There's uniforms, just a less sports, more focus on academics. So we have kind of a lot of built-in choice, which I think it helps in a lot of respects to keep parents happy and make sure they're getting as close to what they can get for their kids. So, and then you combine that. I think the other choice option through high school is dual enrollment with community colleges. And there's a lot of partnerships between public schools and community colleges, but if your kid can graduate with 2 years of community college under their belt, and then they can go transfer anywhere, to any state school in Virginia, and only have to get 2 more years left of college, it's freaking awesome. So.
Okay. So let me just dig down just a little bit deeper into that question. So, some parents want to see the dollars follow the kids. The only real option we have in Virginia right now is the education tax credit program, whereby kids that leave the public system and go to a private system, if the parents qualify financially and so forth, and are scholarship organizations that are raising those funds, then that creates, in a sense, a choice option for them. And of course, then, education savings accounts and, the homeschool option, so forth. So what are your thoughts about that? Is it still, look, the parent should be able to make their decision for their kids, or do you have different opinions there?
Well, the school board members don't get into the policy making of, vouchers and all those types of things, right? Mm-hmm. That's generally a state legislature type issue. But at the end of the day, parents need to be able to make decisions that are best for their kids. And whatever opportunities arise, the better. And the more competition, the more options, the more that different options will step up to the table and hopefully improve their game. We saw a lot of creativity and flexibility at the private and Christian school level throughout the pandemic, that public schools were just too large as a system to be able to kind of make those adaptations as quickly as we saw with a lot of, one-off schools making decisions. So there's a lot of different possibilities and options, but school boards should do everything they can to make sure that they're being responsive to parents and giving parents flexibility, and different other levels of government can step up and hopefully do their part as well.
Absolutely.